Guardians of the Plain. I'm Brigadier General Anthony Mohat, the commander of the Kansas Army National Guard. And I wanted to start today with a discussion about safety and the importance of that as you get ready to start your annual training periods and going to great locations across the country to conduct training. Many of these things start with a conversation about safety, just like we're having today, a discussion about those things that are important that a commander has got in their training philosophy and their safety philosophy, about how we can keep soldiers safe. As many of you know, you're going to be going to tactical environments where training is centered around moving heavy equipment, driving them, engaging in different exercises, events with them. And I ask you to really think through the process. Do you have trained drivers? Do you have co-drivers that are trained? Do you have drivers that have enough sleep? Do you have drivers that have been training on this vehicle for a period of time? Because in many cases, a lot of them haven't driven the vehicle that they'll be driving at annual training for months, and they need to start off slowly. So take it slow, go to the beginning of the process of driver's training, and take it step by step with a certified driver instructor validating their training. Same way with sleeping in the field. Many soldiers have done that through the years, and it's an event that they probably take for granted. But I will ask you as a leader, make sure that we're not. This is an area that has to be concentrated on by your leaders. It has to be well marked, and we have to have an understanding of how ground guides around a sleeping area are very critical to the safety environment that we're in.
Hi, I'm Command Sergeant Major Steve Harmon, Kansas Army National Guard, and today I'd like to talk safety with the first line leaders and the NCOs of the Kansas Army National Guard. And the reason I want to talk to you is you are the key to mitigating risk, injuries, and accidents within the Kansas Army National Guard during the 2021 annual training season. Key to safety has always been and will continue to be first line leaders who are engaged and present in all aspects of training. It's important that you identify the risks of each phase of your operations, each aspect of your training, and identify ways you can work with your team to mitigate that risk. It's important as well for you to have honest, good discussions and safety briefs with your soldiers. Let me give you an example. As first line leaders, you're going to have soldiers who have not had a chance to attend annual training recently or have not been in a field environment. It's important that you identify the risks and the hazards that they're going to be going through during that annual training phase. It's also important to you to understand the issues with sleep deprivation and just the general dangerous nature of working around military equipment. So NCOs, first line leaders, it's important that you follow the standards. We all know what the standards are, but when we get in a hurry or when we get behind, those standards tend to be forgotten or shortcut. Follow the TMs, follow the LOIs, follow the SOPs, do your PCIs and PCCs, your pre-combat inspections and your pre-combat checks, as well as do a buddy check to make sure everybody's ready. There's no excuse for having an accident to save time.
My name is Robert Keys, and I am the Kansas Army National Guard Safety Manager. I want to discuss some important safety issues and topics that are relevant to your training and time in the Kansas Army National Guard. We try to send out a safety message at least once a year, and a major goal of that message is to remind all our personnel about the importance of safety. Normally, we time this information to the beginning of our annual training cycle when units are increasing their op tempo, our environments are changing, and the related increase in accidents that come from this training. The loss of a soldier, whether it's an injury or worse, can impact all of us in ways we cannot predict. As mentioned last year in our safety video, the elimination of accidents and hazard identification is our primary goal for safety. We would like to avoid all accidents with a direct focus on decreasing preventable accidents. Many of these preventable or avoidable accidents are due to not following basic standards. Let me share a couple examples of what I mean. In March of this year, a soldier was struck by a vehicle and killed near Fort Riley while walking down I-70 at 5 o'clock in the morning. Within the past year, there have been 2 separate accidents, one resulting in a fatality and the other in an injury, after maintenance was conducted on the fire extinguishing system of armored vehicles, and the published maintenance procedures were not followed by these soldiers. These 3 accidents could have been avoided if those personnel had followed the established rules or guidance for their situations. If you are in a supervisory role or have the ability to provide oversight for junior soldiers, please make sure that shortcuts are not used and standards are followed at all times. I also wanted to share some of the accident information and trends for Kansas. Within the Kansas Army National Guard, our top accident categories for fiscal year 20 were physical readiness training injuries, vehicle and equipment accidents and damage, and accidents involving cuts or lacerations, hitting something, or getting crushed by an object. One of the most dangerous things we do here in Kansas is to conduct physical readiness training without being prepared or trained, or without knowing the risk of the activities we are about to complete. Second to this is our comfort and complacency with vehicle and equipment operation. We cannot forget about the hazards and risks of the operations we are involved in. Tactical vehicle accidents historically have a spike during the third quarter of every year, Army-wide. This problem is not limited to the National Guard, and many of the factors affecting these accidents should be mitigated. After an investigation, the Army found that more than 80% of these accidents were due to a lack of proper leader engagement. Almost half the accidents had hazards of inexperienced drivers, and over 40% showed inadequate driver's training prior to the accident. 20% of the accidents indicated a failure to conduct proper PMCS and maintenance checks, and almost the same amount of cause due to convoy operations planning. Off-duty mishaps are another issue I would like to talk about. Every year, the Army loses an average of 86 soldiers to these accidents. That's the equivalent to losing a company of soldiers per year to an event we should be able to mitigate or avoid. These accidents include pedestrian mishaps, like I mentioned earlier, accidents where alcohol was involved or caused the accident, water and boating accidents, mishaps with privately owned weapons, or accidents that involve our personally owned cars or motorcycles. Reminding everyone about some of the inherent hazards for these activities is important. Last year in the safety video, we asked that safety programs not just be a check-the-block process. In units that have placed emphasis on safety, we have seen results, decreased accidents and injuries, but we still need to continue to improve our programs. Again this year, we are asking that units conduct risk management appropriately and at all levels of planning and operations. This is one of the primary goals to preventing accidents for units. Ensuring the hazards are identified, appropriate mitigation is used, and the correct level of approval for the residual risk is part of this process. Last, please ensure this information is disseminated to all soldiers. Hazards or mitigation identified by leadership won't help if the private or specialist being exposed is not aware of them. With many of the Kansas units conducting AT this year at remote sites, please ensure pre-accident plans are updated or validated prior to operations being started. We will be conducting our safety visits during AT as usual. I want to thank everyone for their efforts to their Commander's Safety Program. Have a safe and productive annual training.
One of the things that every leader needs to concentrate on is that we're still in a COVID-19 environment. This affects training. I ask you to continue with the measures that we have in place by washing your hands, keeping social distance, and when in those times that social distancing is not available to them, that you wear your masks. This is no different than we have been doing for the last year, but in some cases, leaders, you're going to have to enforce the standards. Because we've been doing it so long, it's very easy for soldiers to get complacent about this and think that because they've been vaccinated and or because they've already had the virus, that they are no longer able to spread it or get the actual virus themselves. So I ask you to take it seriously and stop the spread. There are many tactical things that we could talk about, and I hope that you do as you go into your training events with a great safety brief at the beginning of each one of them. I'm talking about one that really gets into the mitigation of what training event can have and how it is done through the leaders on the ground enforcing the standards. Have a great annual training and make Kansas proud.